Addison Central School Board District meeting to order, and I said that backwards. The current time is 6:30. At this time, I'd like to go around the room and do introductions. I'm going to start with Suzanne.
Suzanne Buck.
Sophia Lawton, Melba Guzman,
Trisha Allen,
Brian Bauer,
Joanna Doria,
Laura Hartman.
Barbara Wilson.
Wendy Baker.
Jamie McCallum,
Chip Malcolm, Jason Chance,
Heather Noble.
Steve Orzek.
Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities.
Okay, awesome. What I'd like to do on the agenda, I didn't have a motion to adopt the agenda, but I would like to go through that process. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion to move the agenda.
Okay, and may I have a second? Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Suzanne. I would like to entertain one small change under report of the superintendent, fuel oil, propane bid memo. That should have been labeled as an action because we're going to be taking action on that this evening. Any other changes? Anyone else? Okay, so if there's no objection, the agenda is approved as modified. Next is our time on our agenda for public comments on agenda items. Is there anyone on Zoom under the attendee?
Just Matt participating.
Just Matt? Okay, and no one in the room, so then we'll move forward. Recommendation to approve the August 12th and August 13th meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve those? I think we can do those at the same time if everyone is okay with that.
So I move that we approve the August 12th and August 13th meeting minutes.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Steve. Any comments? Seeing none, if there's no objection, the minutes are approved as submitted. ACSD bills approval. I'm going to turn it over to Chip.
There was one set of bills since our last meeting, read on the 19th of August. Jason and I read them. Two general fund warrants. First one for $1,241,980.24. Yeah, of that $1,617,400 approximately is related to healthcare. Just again to put us in perspective, since I report this almost every time. So when we have a change of 15% or whatever it may be this year, you can see how it impacts the budget. The second is a general fund for Vermont Municipal Retirement and Vermont State Teachers Retirement contributions, and that is for $351,841.31. The third one is a payroll warrant for $313,544.73. Any questions that Jason and I had were answered, and I say we accept the bills.
And you seconded it? Okay, great. Any questions? Seeing none, if there's no objection, the bills are approved as read, or reported, I should say. Next on our agenda is a welcome to our student representatives. Sophia is returning. She's now a senior. And now we have Nava, who's going to be joining us. And I would like to just extend a warm welcome. And we're really thrilled to have you guys be part of the board. What Dr. Baker and I are going to do, we're looking for a time where we can have an orientation so we can give you some kind of like, well, this is what the board's responsibilities are, that kind of thing. And we never did that with you, Sophia. So we just kind of jumped you in. So we thought it would be nice to, give you, kind of what does the board do, what are our responsibilities, how you can, really contribute as well. But we're looking very much forward to having you spend this year with us. Thank you. Okay. And normally we do,
I think they like. they have
Would
something
you
they'd
like to-
say.
if you have some, yeah, you can. I figured it was the first meeting and I didn't put report of the student reps since it was the very beginning of school years. But if you guys have something to say, that would be awesome.
I mean, today was just a lot of welcoming stuff for the ninth graders. I think it went well. There's a lot of peer leader stuff going on. For instance, we had a couple of 9th, 10th, and 11th graders sitting alone at some lunch tables. And we had peer leaders going up to, at all 3 lunches, going up and sitting with them.
Nice.
So I think that was a win.
Excellent.
I think I got a lot of positive feedback about the 0 hours. People were really happy about that.
Yes, that's right. This is the new schedule, right? So that'll be real interesting to see how that goes throughout the year. So that's awesome. Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. I didn't want to put them on the spot on the first meeting, but that was great.
We've been chatting about that.
Okay, cool. Up next is the report of the superintendent. So hand it over to Dr. Baker.
Well, I want to first concur with the students in that the feedback I received in the grocery store this evening also was positive about the 0 hour, from both adults and students that were there. So that's good. And congratulate Nava. It was a competitive process. There were actually 7 students who applied
Wow.
to have this position, and Dr. Seal tells me that Nava's application was outstanding, so she was chosen in that sense. So congratulations to you. We have some pictures and wonderful images thanks to Emily Blinstein's perseverance in getting around the district today, because it is the first day of school. So it's possible that somewhere in the world of technology that will show up on the screen for you.
Bruce. Bruce, do you have pictures of the first day to show us?
First, you had to make sure the computer.
Sorry.
Oh, you needed to be plugged in.
Just had a
We needed to be
moment.
plugged in. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
They're working
So-
on
This, and then I just want to share my screen.
The world is related to the smallest common denominator.
That's exactly right.
Awesome.
Okay.
So, by all accounts, it was a very smooth and joyful welcome. One of the things that this district does now is host welcome back events that are before the first day of school. So ice cream parties, pizza parties, things like that, just to allow people to be able to connect, especially if you're transitioning grades. Students that are transitioning grades often will get to come a day before all the other students are there, so that all contributes to making today go smoothly. As far as I know, every student was picked up and dropped off successfully today. So, these are the indicators of success that we rely upon the first day. It also, the first day, I think Emily has a couple pictures in there that relate to the first day together of the licensed and non-licensed staff, which for the first time were all together in an opening day ceremony. It meant that we had increased seating by 20%. And not everybody had been part of that in the past. And so this was the first year that we did that together, which it was nice to see people interacting with each other, cross roles and finding the way that they have things in common that they might not have otherwise expected. So Emily has some paper copies of these as well for those that prefer that, especially because it's a little bit far away to see some of the individual pictures. And you might know some of the kids and the adults that are in there. So So that's possible. And Emily, if you want to give them to Suzanne, pass them around if you'd like one, that's okay. If not, we have other things to do with them. So by all means, I did not ride my bicycle up to all the different schools today. I instead sat by the phone in case there was a need for that, and then there was a little bit, but nothing serious, and it was just nice to hear the principals talk about the small things they were trying to figure out, which was great. So a successful opening by all accounts. Bruce and I were able to tour the construction in Mary Hogan on A Wing, which some of the board members were able to just see, and also the new classroom in Shoreham on Friday to make sure that everything was ready to go for students. And the facilities are bright and airy, and it's a big improvement in both of those areas. So we'll have we'll have an opportunity for board members to see Shoreham also coming up, either the next board meeting or the board meeting after that, whichever works best. So in terms of other items, updating the meeting locations, you have in your packet some materials from Will Hatch. You remember at some point, I think it was in June, you expressed a desire to move the meeting once a month to some of the other schools. That was a practice that you had enjoyed in the past. And now, however, we have recording requirements and streaming requirements that are different from when you did that practice last. So I asked Will to just put together some materials around what would be needed in order to do what I understood was the board's preference, which was to make sure that we have all necessary equipment and set up so that public access, it still stays constant to what it is here, since so many people are engaging because you have the electronic setup that you do. So there's a certain degree of cost involved. If you look through the presentation, the materials that he gave, you can see, that there are recommendations at each school. In many cases, it's between $1,500 and $2,000 a school in order to make that happen, which we can certainly do. But it gave me pause just to come back and make sure that that was information you had before I asked Will to go ahead and complete that project to prepare us to be able to change venues. So that's I guess a discussion item for you, something I need your feedback on.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Emily sent an email requesting the Zoom link.
She's in.
Oh, good. Great. Sorry.
So any questions to Dr. Baker on Will's memo? Yes.
So the only schools that meet all the requirements are MUHS moms in Mary Hogan,
Correct.
and then is it Salisbury Community School that just doesn't have a smart TV?
Right.
So please refresh my memory, knowledge on what our requirements are for streaming and presentation. I know we have to record and have that recording available. What is the requirement around the live feed?
I don't, with the legislation that was passed, it does, it's recording. It's recording.
Okay. So we need to have a record, but not necessarily.
Yeah, right.
And historically, did MCTV attend our
Yes,
away
Yes.
meetings?
yes,
Okay.
yes, they have. So in that case, we actually have a footprint that is live streamed. Yeah. Steve?
Hi, I saw that most of these say running wireless and that sort of thing into the gym. And that was a concern for many of those meetings because of the sound quality in those places. I didn't see any equipment or really anything to address that particular problem, because if we record it and it's bad quality, how is that helping in any way? And that's that any kind of thing to do that would be in addition to this $1,500
Correct.
per
Right.
school.
That's correct.
So
Yeah, currently it runs the meeting owl. I don't know what kind of, supplemental stuff there is to add to the meeting owl.
To buffer kind of the noise.
To bolster the sound quality.
So the recording itself would be problematic Have
Might
we,
be.
have we tested that?
Well,
Suzanne?
all I can say is I was on a Zoom call last week. The Owl was in a gymnasium. And there were people in the gym. Some of us were online. And depending on what was going on, it was exceptionally hard to hear, even with the Owl. And like everyone online, we all turned off our cameras, we all turned off our sound. We tried to eliminate all the possibilities on our end, and it was still. Sometimes you could hear it, other times it was staticky or echoey. So that's just one example, but
Yeah, I think that was the concern that our tech director had, is that we're not gonna be able to put out a quality, interactive meeting from a gymnasium.
Yeah.
Mary Ellen, I mean,
It's just
Ellen.
It's just them.
I've never watched the recordings of our meetings from when they were in the gyms, the school gyms. Has anyone watched them to see how the sound recording is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on the location,
Of the person speaking.
yeah, and it depends on the location, like, as I recall,
Which gyms?
I remember watching it in Salisbury, because we had a pretty intensive, lengthy presentation on literacy, and it was not great quality there, Cornwall was not great.
Sure, no, Bridgeport, one of those two. We had a meeting there that was so bad, we couldn't even hear. what was
Yeah.
going
Right.
on.
I think that's Bridgeport.
It was Bridgeport.
report is acoustically poor.
Mom's also not very, it's just those larger spaces where there's a lot of just kind of echoey.
Well, Chip first. 'cause
Chip,
I've had it.
And then Tricia, yes.
Sort of validates, as I did before, I'm not really in favor of it having to go to every school. I just think it's, for the number of people that come to those meetings from those schools, I think we can have a presence there in some other organized way than holding our meetings there. There's a cost to it, and there's also a quality that I think is really important, and we can't always determine how important each board meeting, wherever we're going to have it, is going to be. In some cases, it may not be as important as others, but I just think there's a lot of work to make this happen, not just expense, but also work, and that work may not make it the case, because most schools don't have any other space other than the gymnasium, cafeteria space. And that's usually pretty big for this type of thing, so state my case.
We'll let Mary Heather go and then
Because
Tricia.
I've had my first round.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, we're probably thinking on the same wavelength, actually, just from a communications and engagements perspective. I mean, we can say, oh, we will do this in another manner, getting out to our community schools and engaging with the folks that we serve, the families that we serve. But the question is, are we going to follow through with that? How are we going to do that on a regular basis? I mean, I think the reason why the Communications and Engagement Committee proposed this was because it's already on our schedule. We're already expected to be somewhere. So it seemed like the path of least resistance. And I guess this is an obstacle for sure, but if it's not legally required for us to stream, or if we have MCTV doing that for us, or providing a recording for us, I mean, it's not like we're doing anything incorrect. The disadvantage is that we don't have people able, I mean, we can still try to do the Zoom. We just may not have people able to hear the highest, quality, but they still might be able to participate. But the idea is to be able to get out to communities so that folks can participate in a different way. So I think we have to decide, what's more important. So, I don't know.
So
I don't know
yes,
the answer,
Tricia.
but
Mary Heather and I are on the same
we're plugged
wavelength.
in.
Yes. So for what it's worth, I don't think the cost outlined there is justified. You're right. I don't think we should spend money in that way. That being said, it is important that we get out to all of the schools. And Mary Heather outlined, our thought process for this being the solution to having a presence. So it's really, are you willing and able to carve out a couple more hours every month for another event?
Right.
Or do we say our away meeting, our outer meetings, right?
Our district meeting.
Our district meetings aren't OWL live streams.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and is there a conversation we can have with MCTV around something more formal? I mean, they're wonderful. They're here every time. Props, that's all great. But just to, I don't know, codify that or make that a for sure thing.
Would it be possible to, I don't want to pull Jim in, but would it be possible to take a look at the live stream and the recording that's there, that's at our schools? Do they have better success because of the equipment that they have? Right? I feel funny talking about this in front of them. You know,
Well, and-
would that be something?
Yes,
for-
and hello, Jim. It's nice to see you tonight.
Yes.
Hiding back here.
I know. Because if in fact the quality, you know, because obviously they've been doing it, and if the quality has been strained, you know, I don't think I haven't read any requirement that we have to physically be the ones recording it, as long as we have a recording, right? And that could be our official recording, especially when we are out. And I think in the past, we even linked in the MCTV in the calendar, you know, in the website. That's actually what got linked in. And we could investigate that anyway to see if that's possible so that it's consistent. But
So I don't know if I am overlooking something or if someone else has input, but it seems like it's either, the question, the idea is either, do we change course and commit more time from our shared calendars to doing outreach, district visits, or do we explore more options, understanding that we probably won't have a great live stream option?
Sophia?
I love the conversation of going out to different schools and getting communities involved. I just want to put it into the conversation that neither Nava or I have our licenses, and it means that we are probably going to be on Zoom for the farther meetings.
Or,
Suzanne?
in the past, we have had board members that have mentored our high school reps, and they have also taken it on to be the chauffeurs. So they have gone and they've picked them up and delivered them home safely
Yes.
after each board meeting, so that's also an option.
Yes.
Depends on who rise of the board person.
So, I was, yeah, Ellen?
I just think that the choices that Tricia gave us are right, and we should consider it that either we as a full board, not just the handful of people who might be available on a day, but like we really commit to all 13 of us or all 15 of us showing up to 7 additional, I think, right? Six additional events, or we make this work. I think we can make this work. I would be interested if all the spaces have to be gyms, if all the you know, like I think there's a way of getting creative on all of this, but we should think of it that way. Either we're all going to sign up for an additional level of outreach and the commitment that Tricia outlined, which is right, or we make this work with the calendar and the schedule that we have.
So what I was thinking we could do is just go around the table, and that way everyone gets a chance to verbalize their thoughts. So Steve, why don't we start with you?
I'm remembering the quality of those recordings, and it was pretty disappointing. So I don't know how to make that work. And if we want to explore something with MCTV, yeah, sure, I'm open to the idea, but another $10,000 for us to do this seems like, because I know budget discussions are coming up. That could be a margin that we definitely want to be. So I want to know way more about this before we commit to this, both around the expense and around the quality of the recordings that we're going to be doing.
So let's, if we could
clarify.
focus it on what Trish had articulated, that, we find a way to just do a recording and CTV. We take the requirement down if we are on site as one option, or if we don't do that, make a commitment as a board that we would actually make a point to do more activities within the community and within each community school,
So it's an either or choice.
or
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, that's how we kind of need to frame it.
yeah,
Additional events then.
okay.
I would rather keep the board meetings, rotate the board meetings around.
Same.
Another the high quality audio and additional meetings,
And
additional events.
additional events, okay.
Yeah, I think I would too. I make the point that the three of the schools on this list, the best ones that are already serviced by are the three Middlebury schools, okay? So I'm not sure that we have to go to Munzer, have to go to Mary Hogan. We met at 208, is that where we met? Yeah. Which was not a school, it happened to be in Middlebury. So here we are now, because we don't have that available.
Jamie.
Rotate meetings.
Okay.
Someone keeping his tally.
Yep.
I have concerns about the audio quality, so I think I'm team more outreach to more visits to schools.
Rotate meetings.
I think I enjoy the format that we presently have, and I think we have the technology to fix it. If the audio is off, somebody out there working for this district should be able to take care of it.
Some,
So are you saying
yeah,
Can I just
to
clarify?
rotate meetings, or are you saying to commit to
No,
extra hours?
apparently there has been a complaint that if you listen to the audio of the meeting, video, the sound quality is not the way you'd like it. So what I'm suggesting is that people in technology here in the district work on it.
okay, so let me clarify. So the quality is, and this hasn't happened for a long time because of COVID and whatnot. We used to rotate and actually physically have meetings at Shoreham, at Bridport, at each of our various schools. And that's where the quality was an issue.
Oh,
And so what's on the table is, do we basically not worry so much about having the technology there? We rely on MCTV. We minimally have to record it, which is statute. Or would the board prefer that we don't do that, we stay here, which would be where we would always have our meeting, and we all commit to doing more activities within each of the districts, schools, across the district?
well, then I'll rephrase. I say, I'm enjoying the format that we have right now here, not going around.
So I would like to rotate our meetings.
I mean, I think the going out extra with the whole not having a license thing and the extra time in the car, I think what we have right now, from what I've heard and so far, seems to be good.
I also think the whole not having a license thing is swaying my decision this Wednesday here.
And Suzanne,
I like going out in the community.
okay.
And then Ellie.
And Ellie is, oh, Ellie,
Yeah, I would like to rotate the meetings if possible.
okay, thank you. So roughly, what was kind of the,
For example.
this isn't an official vote, but it's a sense. Yes.
7 are in favor of rotating the meetings. 6 are not. And that is counting, sorry. So 1, 2, 3, yeah, 6 are not.
Okay. So then, I think I would like to charge the Communication Engagement Committee to You maybe contact MCTV, see, or even go back in time and listen to one of the recordings, see how it is when they streamed it, and maybe come back with a proposal. But we need to also work with Dr. Baker to schedule these. If you look at the calendar, we really have to start in September to be able to hit every single school before June, right? And I mean, we're here at the high school, so I guess that would eliminate maybe the requirement.
You've already
for-
started.
Yeah.
That can be our September meeting.
So we did try to keep the ones December and January in Middleburg because those were budget meetings.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
We often have had them in the band.
Yeah,
Can I also ask Dr. Baker for her feedback on this?
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased to have you in the communities. I don't think it can hurt for people to be able to feel that they have access, especially, we have a lot of pressures, budgetary pressures coming up and things like that. So I think it's going to be important for you to hear what people have to say. And after a year, you'll know whether that produced more engagement or less engagement, than what you've only had. And we're happy to reach out to Jim and his team and just make sure that there's a way to meet your legal requirement for recording, which could be done a couple of different ways, so there may be a little bit of a cost involved in that, but I'm hearing that if you vote this way, that's what you would just as soon absorb if you are able to go to the second meeting of the month or however it is that we work that out.
Right.
So point of order,
Steve.
are we following a course of action where you said you were taking a vote that didn't count as a vote, or?
Well, it was
what
a
are we
straw
doing?
poll. I mean, it wasn't official action. Do we need to do an official vote on this? I was just trying to get a sense of feedback, what people thought. We didn't have
Okay.
it as an action on the agenda.
Right, but it was a 7-6 vote, and now it sounds like we're going with the 7.
I thought she tasked the Communications and Engagement Committee to find out more information and bring the information to the board.
With like a plan for
Yeah.
when it would happen and where we would go. et
So like the don't abandon the traveling scheme.
Yeah,
Let's find out more information and come back to it.
So the plan, just for clarification, the plan is to have the rotating board meetings, not looking at both the rotating board meetings or what it would take to have additional events on the schedule.
Okay, Mary Heather.
I think the Communications and Engagement Committee would probably be taxed with looking at the rotating and or if not rotating, what kind of commitment the board would need to make as a whole to get out to the communities in lieu of that.
Okay.
So I think that is what the committee is really tasked
you.
with.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mary Heather.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other feedback, comments? Okay.
Next. So we have some recommended personnel appointments and resignations for your consideration. We usually read them.
Yeah.
Into the record.
I would like to move that we appoint Wendy Blanchett, paraprofessional, Paige Cusinelli, paraprofessional, Deb Carpack, health teacher, Shannon Miner, paraprofessional, Michael Patterson, paraprofessional, and Shannon Thurber, administrative assistant for the 2024-2025 school year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, feedback, comments? Seeing none, if there's no objection, the
I have a
appointment,
quick question.
Okay.
Sorry, Barb. Are these counted in the vacancies still remaining that you referred to?
No.
Okay, no, thank you.
And one other, we, before as a board would get in an email correspondence where the appointments were going to what school. Is that something that it would just,
So probably what I would do, if you'd like, is just add them here.
yeah,
Which would be, although if they are on the student services team, their appointment is based on student need,
Yeah.
so it's not necessarily gonna be fixed.
yeah.
If they're, certainly where they're beginning, would be easy enough, we'll just add that to the line. Thanks.
May I make a point about that? It has become a bit of an issue, whether people get to say, I was hired to be at this school. So mixing those two might be problematic. So if a person says, I was hired, look at the board minutes, they said I was hired to be a paraprofessional at Mary Hogan, and we try to move them. They say, no, I was hired at Mary Hogan. So I'm a little concerned about combining those two. I understand that people would like that information. Don't know if we should tie it to the appointment approval, perhaps in a separate cover or separate set of information, rather than making it part of the motion, is my concern.
Erin, Heather?
I would agree with that. I think especially for student service professionals, it should be clear always to the public and to all board members that these are district employees that may shift as student need arises.
In the past, I believe they were listed as ACSD, like district. It didn't identify where they might happen to be the first time. Is that sufficient, or Steve, does your concern go beyond the folks that are at the district level?
There was talking about, there was talk here that as part of this information that we get in board pack as an action item, that would include where they're assigned. And that's my concern. Whether that information is distributed or distributed separately, as long as it's not part of the motion or as part of the record that says that this is where the hire goes, that could be and has been a sticking point. And I think it's not just those district employees. I think that we have right of reassignment to anybody.
We have right of reassignment to anyone at any
Yeah.
time for any reason.
Yeah,
That management
so-
chooses. Yeah, that's generally people I think are very clear about that.
Maybe Wendy, you could come with the information about where people who are being initially assigned to a particular building, like where they're starting out, if that information is available. And you could just offer that verbally in the meeting so that we all, like, as we're just looking, if it can't be written down. I seriously doubt that anyone is looking at our meeting minutes and using that as a way of saying, well, I was hired to only work in this building, but I think there've got to be some, I would hope, low threshold workarounds that we could still understand where some of the building assigned paras and staff are going to, and not get into the issue that Steve's raising.
Other comments, discussion? Okay. So
Call the vote.
I'm gonna, so at this point, if there's no objection, the appointments are approved as submitted.
So the next part of the superintendent report is a presentation that people running the technology will want to load up, and Matt, I think, is joining us from afar to be able to walk us through this. The framing behind this, which I'll share just until this gets going, is essentially something that you're already familiar with. Across the state, there are legislative requirements to have capital improvement plans in place. This is work that every district across the state is required to do. I believe from my brief attendance at the facilities meetings toward the end of the spring that was something that you had talked about last year, and we're trying to contend with sort of what does that really mean? What does that look like? So what we would like to do tonight is refresh that conversation for you. We also
Across the top. This is the top slideshow.
left.
Upper right.
Upper right.
Right.
Upper
actually,
right.
Upper right.
Sorry.
Upper right.
Good job.
Right next to
There we go. Right
Thank
there. Yeah.
My other left.
Yeah. The other right.
Sorry, Bruce, didn't mean to.
So our intent tonight is to refresh that conversation for you, and we've taken the liberty to try to to determine how you might go about eating this elephant in some ways, you know, and so Matt and Bruce are here to provide the technical expertise and we'll kind of help support you along the way.
You want to begin, Matt?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Sorry I can't be there with you, but down in Rhode Island dealing with some family medical stuff. So, yeah, I was just thinking about it. The best way to liven up a board meeting is to spend all day in an ICU.
Oh, that's tense, Matt. I hope things will go better.
Yeah.
All right, that's my only joke. Will, are you at the driver's seat in case we need to switch slides?
Well,
Bruce?
I am at the driver's seat. I'm happy to advance the slides.
I see you there, Bruce. How you doing?
Great.
Okay. So let's go to the first slide.
Yep, I think we're on it.
The next slide.
Next one.
Next
All right.
slide. We're starting off with just a little bit of context and a lot of the trajectory that we're on stems from Vermont Act 72, which was passed in 2023. This was the act that initiated the school facilities assessment, but also triggered a lot of other things, such as the task force that Bruce sat on, and he's going to tell us about that a little bit more in a sec. But it was important to sort of start here because this is where kind of state comes in and starts across the board trying to do what's been really hard for them to do for a long time, which is get the gears turning again for this giant machine of deferred maintenance school facilities, and to somehow figure out where the starting point is going to be for cleaning up a $6 billion school facilities mess that they have on their hands. So when Wendy said the eating of the whale or eating of the elephant, that's the task at hand. It's a giant job statewide. It's a giant job for every district, and it's really hard to know where to start. So this is kind of the strategy that we have brainstormed and worked on to help guide our own district there, and to do so in a way that hopefully jives with the state's timeline and their progress, because it's going to have to all kind of converge to be successful.
Okay.
So Bruce, go ahead.
I'll jump in. So not only was I on the task force, I gave some testimony during the development of Act 72. I'm lucky enough to get this role because I'm the president of the Vermont School Maintenance and Maintenance Custodial Association. And so that was called out in law that individual gets to have input. So thankfully. So I gave my input. And all last year we met fairly frequently to try and come up with a recommendation for how to approach this issue of the massive amount of deferred maintenance there is. And we followed, we looked at other states, so we try not to recreate the wheel. And there's definitely some, Rhode Island, I think, is probably the closest in scenario to where we are. And so this task force gave a recommendation to legislature. They listened to it, said they needed more information, and reconvened the task force for this year. They did change the makeup, so it's all legislators, and then the AOE sits in on these to provide input. So I went and watched the first two meetings because I'm no longer a member of the task force. And it's really, to this point, they've been just doing background. What did we do last year?
Oh,
So,
yep.
yeah. And so I'll be curious to see where they end up at the end of December when they're supposed to have some kind of report pulled together. All that said, in our discussions last year, we talked about trying to restart school construction aid, and some of the ideas that went around the room were to require districts to be considerate of how old the building is and what kind of condition it's in. So you can go ahead and fix up your school if it's about to fall down, but you probably won't get any construction aid for it. So they really want people to be wise with the resources. There would be definitely incentives for doing things in a greener sense. There would be incentive for finding ways to do things in a smaller footprint. And so those were all ideas that were tossed around that I'm sure will be on the table again this time around. And with that in mind, and some of the things that we talked about last year, they also said any of those projects that kind of fit into that criteria that happened before this legislation comes to pass, they would grandfather in. So they would be looking for what's called a shovel-ready project, which is on the next slide. I think. It's the next one after
That's
this.
actually.
Yeah, got ahead of myself. So shovel-ready. So that just really means that you thought about the project, you developed it, you have engineered drawings for the project. You may have gone as far as getting the project priced out by a professional estimator. Here are those definitions. And so that's kind of how we would recommend we proceed, is we target things within our district, move facilities towards that goal. So we look back at.
So Bruce, I can hop in there because I think the next, and thank you.
Sure.
I think as you were saying, and just to back you up a little bit, you said two things there. You said there's a grandfathering idea, which is to say you do something next year that is an energy efficiency project, and is sort of targeted at one of those state aids in development. And even though the state aid hasn't emerged yet, there's a 10-year or 5-year or TBD number of years where you can claim retroactive assistance funds for that project. So that would be a grandfathering in, a sort of planned retroactive assistance. There's also the shovel readiness, which is moving a project that is targeted at state aid towards the highest level of readiness so that we can appeal to funding if and when it emerges, and say, hey, look, we have schematics, we have a plan to get money for all of this. X, Y, and Z are all checked. That's the shovel readiness that we're talking about. And so this next, again, as I said in the beginning, a lot of big questions, right? So this is a how do we move the district facilities towards shovel readiness? How do we do it? How do we consider the capital improvements needs of all of our buildings in pursuit of educational outcomes? How do we minimize institutional gridlock? And how do we achieve planning unity? So the last two are kind of linked together. Institutional gridlock, allowing things to proceed and move forward for the sake of keeping progress, keeping the ball rolling. And then planning unity, how do we get everybody aligned for the major initiative that it's going to take to, as a school district, address all these major problems. And I think without that level of unity, it's going to feel like a really uphill battle. So the model that we came up with for consideration tonight and moving forward is a two-process, two-phase model. Process one is a Middlebury pre-authorization initiative. This is targeted at our 3 Middlebury schools, which are all consolidated or at sort of capacity right now. All 3 of those schools have been the site of major recent capital improvements, investments. I guess less so mums, but certainly the high school or the cafeteria at the high school and the HVAC project at Mary Hogan. So this is really saying what's left at those 3 Middlebury schools for capital improvements and how can we place those workflows into a 5-year capital improvement plan that kind of sets them in an outlook calendar so that we have those sort of in the hopper. And then once they're there, what shovel-ready actions, whether that's contracting with an architect to get a new set of drawings, revisiting current pricing, because a lot of the data that we're using from our Truex Collins facilities assessment was from 2018. Things have changed so much since then that it's really, it's going to be impossible to use that data with any degree of accuracy other than really big ballpark estimates. So what can we do to identify and move forward on shovel-ready actions for those? That's phase one. That could take 5 years. But phase two, coming behind it, is the school construction finance initiative. This is, like I said in the beginning, where what's going on at the state level starts to merge with what's going on at the district level. So as we see things start to take shape at the state level, how do we take our own capital improvement plan and get to an intersection point where we can say we're entering phase two, which is to sort of green light things that are ready to go, because now we know what it's going to look like to get this construction aid. We know where we're going to get aid, where we're not going to get aid, and like Bruce was saying, things that are green or things that are STEM related, or we don't even know what all the criteria are going to be yet. But as we learn more, our plans will start to intersect there. So that's the first process. Now, if you're keeping track, process two, second of the 2 processes, smaller school pre-authorization. This is our other 6 buildings. In process 2, phase 1, the school board would start by analyzing the C30 policy, which is the policy governing school attendance and what based on what town you live in. Looking at that policy to determine what options are available to optimize educational potential for ACSD students with regard to school attendance. That policy discussion and work is the first step. The second step of phase 1 would be taking those decisions and that guidance at a policy level and applying that to the district's approach to moving facilities, items of need at those buildings into capital improvement plan, placing it on a 5-year calendar. So in phase 2, we would sort of do the same thing as we did in phase 1 of the first process, which is moving ahead with pre-authorization steps, scope and scale, architectural drawings, contractor bidding, and financial planning. So that's the summary of the 2 models the 2 processes in the model. Things to note. So, as I've said a couple times, it's important that, we're converging things here. We're converging educational needs, which, are first and foremost. The strategic plan is playing a big role in that as well. we're converging policy options, and then whatever guidance and requirement comes down from the state level. All of those things are an intersection point here. And also, this kind of gets back to that big rusty cog that has not been moved in a long time, and the steps in this model are designed to wake that up, to start a slow but intentional cycle of moving our projects into a plan that addresses them and gets them in the hopper in order of priority or in order of possibility or however we wind up doing it, and sets the stage for a sustainable cycle of capital improvements where we can tell that once we do something, we can set a 25-year timer because that's when we're going to have to do it again. We can start placing things much further out on the horizon than we're able to right now, for the sake of having a better handle on the long-term stewardship of our district's facility buildings. That's kind of the idea. I don't know if there's anything left other than questions for Bruce or I.
Okay, Ellen, and then Jason.
The question I have is about, if I'm interpreting the two process proposals correctly, it feels like one focuses on Middlebury schools and one focuses on the rural schools. And I'm wondering if the rural schools are all elementary schools. Obviously, we have one high school and middle school. If memory serves, there's a lot on the list for MUHS, right? There's the copper pipes and other things I'm going to forget about, and mums, I'm sure too. So I'm curious if under the proposal for process 2, which is really looking at our school attendance requirements, I see that as kind of reshuffling how we understand who goes where and creating an understanding of how many schools do we have at the end of that process or wherever that leads us. Does that preclude us from talking about any Middlebury schools at all as far as what their capital improvement needs are too? Because it feels like it's putting all the Middlebury schools in one category and then the rural schools in one process and the rural schools in another. But is there a way that we could, I know this is blowing it up a little, but can we keep sort of everything in the mix? Because I would hate for the high school, which is our only high school, to not be under consideration for us to get shovel ready while we're also working through a very difficult conversation around our elementary schools. I don't know if that makes sense.
That phase one is the high school.
I think they go concurrently.
Process one is
I was
Middlebury
interpreting them as
schools
two
all
different
moving to
processes.
shovel readiness.
Oh, do they happen at the same
Concurrently.
time?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
the board would have to
Misunderstood.
organize that
Got
way,
it,
but
got
it's
it.
meant to be concurrent.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry if that wasn't
this is
clear,
a
but yeah,
proposal.
no, it's the idea that concurrently we will be
So while
having a
this is
policy
happening,
discussion.
then C30, all those kinds of considerations can be happening in parallel.
Perfect.
To
Okay.
get ready then to talk. That's the only reason it's phase 2 is we got other work we have to do first.
Right. Because we know, yes, okay, thank you. I was misunderstanding that as an either or
Yeah.
option.
Does that
Good.
really understand? Yeah,
Is that,
because I think that is a confusing
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah. Jason and then Chip?
Matt, thank you. I really appreciate your 25-year planning horizon. My question is, what about new building versus investing in schools that are nearing the end of their usable life? My understanding was that the state was going to heavily prioritize new building as opposed to investing in, say, a 75-year-old high school renovation.
Yeah, so that ties, I think, a little bit to what Bruce was alluding to in his, you can choose to fix your old school building, but you probably aren't going to see a lot of matching. So I think that the model that the state has suggested in terms of these funding assistance plans is sort of a matched fund. So, if you are, and Bruce, back me up here if I go off track, but
Sure.
It's sort of a menu, right? Where if you're looking to maximize your state's assistance, they will have elements of that or percentage points of the assistance which are tied to how green your project is. They will have percentage points that are tied to how new your project is, or what it does for the statewide square footage footprint of facilities. Basically, the state is saying it's only going to invest in the things that it sees as worthy future investments, from just purely from an investment in something standpoint. The state won't be pumping money into aging infrastructure that doesn't get addressed to its level of satisfaction, because that would be kind of lending in a way that is not sustainable for them, or not prudent for them. So that's, I think, what Bruce was saying, and we don't know what that menu is going to look like, which is going to be an important piece of the puzzle and helping to plan, to say strategically, let's only go into this building with this targeted solar project because we can max out our matching funds by just doing a large scale solar renovation or an efficiency renovation, something like that is really targeted at where we know we can gain money. At other buildings, it might be a trickier thing, right? And as you said, new construction has the potential to carry the highest degree of matching, but it also carries the highest degree of cost. I mean, nothing is going to cost as much as building a new building, and that's at the end of the day something that we have to pay for.
Right, and you're right. The state is looking at it through the lens of at one point, do we say we can't provide incentive for you to do your project? If your building is just so far gone that it would make more sense to build a new building, they're going to incentivize you to build a new building rather than reconstruct the existing building.
Which happened in the 1960s across the state. That's how many of the union school districts came about, was that very thing.
The shovel ready is sort of a hard one because it costs a lot of money to get something to that level. And, looking back when we did, which I remember very well, when we did the high school renovations, major ones, and the middle school, buying the land and building it, we went out for a bond which failed, okay, and then we came back with a totally different process, which was the one that eventually got passed. But that got passed as a bond, which included the 30% that the state was going to put in, okay? So the shovel-ready part was happening, but we knew we were going to get 30% if we could pass the bond.
Right.
Okay, this is sort of the other way around, as I see it, is that they're saying you're going to do all this work and you may not get anything. And that seems, I guess I understand the philosophy, but I think it's really impractical, honestly.
I think part of the reasoning behind that is you're going to end up having to do this work at some point, whether the state ever comes around with funding or not. And so that we need to look carefully at what work we want to accomplish, what things we need to do to provide, safe and healthy environments for our students. And, to have it shovel ready, should funding come around, is great, but this is work that we can't ignore. We're going to end up doing it at some point.
If you look at Burlington, all right, they had to build a new high school. They did it all on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
The state's not putting in, quote, any of that. Now, we may, all of us, pay toward that.
We're all paying for it.
We're all helping pay for that.
I know that, but it was not on that bond issue that the 160 million or whatever that number was. Burlington had a vote for that. They were desperate to have a high school. They had to. So you're right, what you're saying, yes, but that's going to be, and there's plenty of other places that are like that. Schools that are much worse than these.
Yeah, Woodstock.
Yeah, Woodstock. Right?
Which is a question I have. So the state has come in and assessed our buildings, right? Have they identified anywhere, well, this building, you should not invest in, or we're not, you know what I mean? There are places in the state that I'm sure that's probably true. If, for our buildings, do we get that sense that a building is so bad that even if we did an energy project, whatever, that they wouldn't help us?
Yeah, so the state assessment was like a really high altitude
Yes.
snapshot of what things look like when they did it. And we've moved forward, since the state assessment, we renovated our cafeteria, we've done a HVAC project in Marihogan. And all of those things help to improve the building's, FCI score, Facilities Condition Index score. We did, at that time when they did that assessment, we do have buildings that are to the point where they would incentivize us to build new rather than heavily invest in the existing building. Based on that snapshot, it's different today.
Steve?
As I recall, the facilities master plan also have a statistic that said this building is 80% depreciated, or it was something that said this building has used up 80% of its usefulness.
Our facilities master plan, not
Our-
the state's.
Yes, ours.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a thumbnail of what shape the buildings are in, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
A thumbnail, from 2018 and
Sure.
yes. And absolutely, I think that report's going to be more accurate than what the state did because we were more in depth in that process. Again, that's also even older than the state's assessment.
So,
Bruce, have you heard anything about the dashboard coming out? Because the facilities condition index data from the state will be made public on a dashboard at some point, but we haven't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dashboard release date has been pushed back. Surprise. Yeah, it was supposed to come out sometime near the start of school, and it's been pushed back without a new date.
So my other kind of just comment is, having just toured Marihogan, the A wing, and what, like if we did the other wing in that, doesn't that change the dynamic of that building?
It does. Yeah.
I mean, it sure felt that way, just for anyone that hasn't seen it, it was really pretty awesome, right? It's well worth going to visit, I think. But to me, it just, felt like a new building, that wing. So with that
The facilities condition index is not static, so if you make a major investment in a building, you will lower the index.
Right.
We lowered it at the high school, we lowered it at Marihogan. So those investments are able to kind of keep your FCI in the sweet spot there of, let's say 70 or below. I can't remember if there's an industry standard lower than that, but
right.
But I think what Bruce was saying earlier is that there's a point where the cost associated with taking an FCI of 80 or 85 down to 0 would be greater than the cost of building a new building.
It would be in a building. Yep.
Yeah. And there's just talking with industry folks that deal with facilities. A lot of the projects where you do a major renovation on a building can be very disruptive to education for the year or two that's happening. Whereas if you construct a new building and then you can move into it all at once, it's a lot less disruptive. It's a lot faster to build because you're not trying to work around students, and it's a lot less disruptive to the educational system because you're transitioning typically over the summer out of your old building into a brand new building.
Questions for folks that haven't had a chance to speak? Mary Heather. Okay.
Sorry, Matt or Bruce, can you give us a sense of the urgency we're under in terms of not wanting to miss the train here? And getting a capital improvement plan, a 5-year plan for our facilities kind of done so that we can get in line appropriately for state funding should it become available?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. We need to do a 5-year plan. It's already rule in Rule 112 of the law. And so we are working on that plan. We would like to have it dovetail with this process. So we're all working towards the same goal. And that, the AOE doesn't necessarily have any teeth to say, if you don't have this plan done, we're going to penalize you in any way. In fact, they would much rather incentivize things, and that's why we're trying to get ahead of it. And so we will have a 5-year capital plan in place. We have one on paper, which is all the state really asked for. We would like to formalize it more than what we currently have. And so that would be a prerequisite to funding. As far as urgency, it's going to be, if they moved as quickly as the wind, they wouldn't have anything done till next year. And knowing how government works, I think we have more time.
Dr. Baker.
Yeah, only two maybe crystal ball points to add. The superintendents in the Champlain Valley Association met with the secretary, interim secretary last Friday, and she kind of suggested two things around this. One of them, Matt, your team may be closer to, but it seems as though there's some consensus around taking any bond payments that districts assume and putting those outside of the spending cap requirements, so that those are not counted in the threshold limits that go into any formula that's going to be revised again. So that was just one point of interest in what she's talking about. The other thing that's interesting is that the commission, the future of Vermont education, right, is I wouldn't be surprised that if the winds line up such that these things come together, so that in that vision is going to be some information about exactly what our footprint should look like as a state. So I guess it's a bit of a roll of the dice as to how much proactivity versus reactivity is important in that process. I'm not sure that I have a feel for that quite yet, but I imagine that will be coming in this legislative session for sure. So it feels like if we have a better sense of everything we can have a sense of by the spring, then we'll be in a better position to take advantage of the way the wind is blowing, because to Chip's point, it does take time and effort and energy to be able to prepare properly to be in position for funding, should we choose to have it.
I'll just add that the new excess spending threshold currently does not have new debt or new bond payments as an exemption from the excess spending threshold. It lists existing bond debt as an exemption as long as it was existing as of June 30th of this year, but it doesn't move forward with that assumption, which to me feels like something's got to give, because if you're trying to say that the whole state needs to collectively fix $6 billion worth of broken buildings, and that all of that is going to potentially expose districts to getting double taxed, you're never going to get there. So that I expect that to change.
And before Chip, I just want to make sure, since not everyone's had a chance to speak, Is there anyone that would like to say something?
Yeah.
Jamie.
I'll just say that, thanks to both of you this is really interesting. Just on the process 2 part, the policy committee will be looking at C30. I imagine it's gonna be a short policy, long discussion, is what I bet. And at some point, Matt and Bruce, it might be good for us to reach out to you and invite you to talk to us more about how you think, what the ramification that we are talking about now might impact this policy. I can't see you, Bruce, but I'm sort of looking toward you a little bit. You know, if that might be feasible for you to just give us a little bit, because I think it's great. I think this is really interesting, the way that this particular phase anyway of it is being led by this policy, and so it'll be important to get more input and feedback from you guys and a lot of people about that to move forward with it.
Yes.
My concern is with what I've heard dealing with the state of Vermont government. What I think what's happening in education is politics. And when politics change, what we're going to be hearing changes. The example that I would like to give and why we have to be extremely careful about what the state says that we're going to need to do. I mean, that has to be checked out very carefully. Because my understanding is that Burlington's problem was 2 different sets of what's passable, what's allowable. The state had a higher number than the federal government. And the state insisted that it was going to go with its measurement and not the federal government. If it had gone with the federal government, my understanding is that 3 rooms in that school would have had to have been remediated, and that's it. Compared to the entire school being torn down. That is a concern of mine.
For the PCBs.
Barb, could I just
Yes,
comment on Wendy's
Yeah.
Baker's comment? I mean, you didn't come out and say it, but in an actual fact, what the state, from the educational, what's best, could come down and say all schools under 60 kids are going to be closed, or you have to consolidate it. So you didn't say that, but that in fact is what I think you were. I'm just using that as a
It's
general thing.
possible.
But
Certainly
that
possible.
kind of stuff. The governor's almost said that to some degree, not in outright, but so I mean we have to be prepared in all of these. I mean, I think you're right. We sort of don't trust them all because we're not necessarily all going to be on the same page on this. But I just use that as a very simple example at this point. But yet that's when you talk about that convergence, that's one of the things that could come up from the state point of view.
Mary Heather.
Yeah, I guess sort of similarly, it's a little bit like the state's movement toward unification, which eventually was imposed on school districts. Obviously, ACSD was one of the first, but then kind of got ahead of the wave. And there's pros and cons of that, but it was going to happen one way or another. I guess, and similarly with respect to requiring a coordinated curriculum, and we got ahead of that wave as well, luckily, and had some bumps along the road, but, these were things that were anticipated, and I think we're lucky to be sitting in this position as opposed to some other school districts who just resisted, and, it's hard to stop a wave. I do think, this may take time. Government moves slowly, but the writing is on the wall. This has been talked about for a long time, and I guess my personal feeling is if there's a way that our communities can come together and envision something that we want for our district kids, that's going to be a good way to try to take advantage of the way the winds are shifting, I guess.
I guess what I'd like to say is once again, something that I've read about. Consolidation is not going to save money. Consolidation may improve your education, but it will not save money.
Any other discussion for folks that haven't had a chance first to speak? And for those that have, anything else? So there's another agenda item that we have under report of the chair that is going to focus on the facilities committee. So there will be some additional discussion as to kind of the charge for the facilities committee. So this is kind of the background that we need for that discussion. So we'll be speaking about this a little bit more. So now we can move to the next item.
Thank you, Matt, very much, Matt and Bruce, for your help in this presentation. Bruce, would you mind presenting the fuel oil bid?
Sure. So in your board pack, you should have received the bid results for fuel oil and propane. And our recommendation is, based on price, that for this upcoming heating season, we use Champlain Valley Fuels at a fixed price of $2.65 a gallon for heating oil, and Files Brothers for propane at a fixed price of $1.56 a gallon.
So since this is an action, can I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept that.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Now we can have discussion on this.
All right, I have a question.
Okay, Ellie?
Yeah, first, there was a typo in that under the part with the propane. I think it still said the previous school year dates, at least on the one uploaded on the board pack.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
I wondered why we didn't look at other propane places,
We did.
because you did, so.
Yep, we send
so
out
it's-
invites to all the local providers, and then also Griffith Energy, which is over in New York. Yeah, so we also advertise it in the paper.
Okay. that's- Sorry. I
That's
missed it.
okay.
Bruce, can you take that one?
That's what I was questioning, because there was, I just know some other places got lower quotes from some of those other places, and was just wondering if we had at least initiated contact with them.
Yeah, if you provide me, want to email me the other places, who they were, I can tell you whether or not they responded to us.
That's okay, but thank you for letting me know that there were other options looked into.
Steve?
I'm not questioning it, but why not the pre-buy?
Because it's hard to estimate exactly what we'll use, and if you pre-buy it, you own it.
Okay.
Chip?
Just to respond to Ellie, it seems like every year we get only 2 bids. Sometimes they varied a little bit, but the bid, they may make a decision they don't want to supply that much, or they don't want to drive that far, or all the other reasons that may keep them from doing that. So it's not like we don't go out to find the cheapest, but yeah.
Any other discussion? Are we ready to call the question? So the motion is to award the fuel oil bid for 2024-25 to Champlain Valley Fuels at a fixed price of $2.65, and the propane bid for, I'm going to say 2024-25 to File Brothers at a fixed price of $1.56. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it passed. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Baker. And so now we can move on to the report of the chair. The first item is the superintendent evaluation next steps and giving you an update. We did take this back to the executive committee that met last Monday. And the committee is working with Dr. Baker. She's actually offered to develop a hybrid of the examples that we were presented at the meeting of the different evaluation tools that Judy presented. And she's going to bring that back to us based on her understanding of the job and what she believes is essential in the evaluation process. And then the executive committee will review it based on our local preferences. The timeline for this is Dr. Baker will provide us a first draft on 9/3/2024, and the committee will meet with her on 9/10 to do any revision. And then the goal is to present that for review and approval at the 9/23 board meeting. Any questions on that? Excellent. Next is AOE rule adoption discussion, which we've had several times, as well as doing all the work prioritizing. I'm going to have Suzanne give us an update on the latest on the rubric and what she's heard.
So the AOE was the organization that requested the quality standards for boards. And they had a committee work on them. They made the quality standards, and they made a rubric. The rubric has gone through VSBA, and we spent quite a bit of time at our retreat in July trying to make sense of some of the wording in the rubric, saying that this needs to change and whatnot. And so then went back to committee, and now the rubrics are now sitting with the AOE. They cannot be used until the AOE gives them their final blessing, because the AOE owns the quality standards, therefore the AOE owns the rubrics. So, as a reason to come to the regional board meetings, which will be held next Thursday via Zoom, we are hoping that the AOE rubrics will be approved and ready for conversation next Thursday. So if any of you haven't had a chance to sign up for the VSBA regional meetings, please do so. Who knows? You might see the rubrics then. Everybody in the VSBA is waiting for them because we've given them everything, and so now it's out of our hands. We're just waiting for the AOE to say, yes, good to go. So that's where they are, and the only other recommendation that I can tell you the VSBA has said is that boards should think very closely about the rubrics and the goals and choose only one area to work on. And it was very clear that, say, because we had chosen budget as was our biggest one. But if you think about, as you work on the standard around budgeting, you're also going to be working on communications and engagement and all these other pieces. So then next year, when you go to choose, you can choose two, and you can say, aha, we're already halfway along here. So because each goal feeds off of each other. So the word of warning was choose one goal, do it exceptionally well, and then tackle something the next year.
So as folks, most of us, I think, remember, we kind of put our final selection on hold because we wanted to see the rubrics, right? That was back in June. And we talked about this at the executive committee, and we're thinking, in light of the feedback that we've received and the fact that the rubric is still pending, the committee really thought that for now we should really go with that highest priority, which was 13-3-2. The board ensures its annual budget aligns with its stated priorities and provides an equitable distribution of resources to help meet the need and goal of every student. Because we're losing time, right? And we're going into budget season. So it would be our thought that for now, that's really what we should focus and embrace. And as Suzanne mentioned, most likely we'll be picking up aspects of some of the others that we wanted to do anyway, partially, as we're going through that process. And so I want to throw that out to see what folks think about that. Obviously, we still want to see the rubric, right?
Oh, yeah, it is. Right over Montpelier.
But at this point, because it's so late in the cycle, from the time that we tried to do this, before you know it, it'll be the end of the school year, and we won't have really accomplished anything. Plus, we're going into budget. So it would be really nice to be able to have that in the forefront as we're doing the budgeting. So my thought anyway, but please, what's others think?
Seems fine.
Okay, is that, okay, so we'll say basically, this is, what we're gonna move forward with, and hopefully, and I haven't signed up, so I need to sign up for the, I wanna see this rubric, so. So anyway, okay, great, thank you. Next, is the Facilities Committee charge update. So during Matt's presentation, we talked about the different, phases, process and phases. And I would like to spend some time here really giving a charge to our Facilities Committee to focus on over the next weeks and months, right? And, my thinking, but it's obviously just my thinking, is for them to really focus on that phase, process 1, starting with Middlebury, because in identifying, okay, these, working with Bruce and Matt, and, identifying, this is our recommendation for the plan, right, of what needs to be in there. Thoughts? Suzanne?
So, in listening to Matt and Bruce discuss it, it really needs to be a parallel track. So we cannot just give the facilities a charge just to look at the Middlebury schools. They have to actually be traveling on 2 paths that at some point will converge. But one of them is labeled Middlebury schools and the other one is listed the other elementary schools.
Right.
So that they are looking at facilities as a whole in the district and the needs.
Sure.
And such.
Yeah. And my, and I probably didn't clarify enough. My thought is the initial focus would be on that first process, and then as the C30 policy work is happening in parallel with that would help them feed the process too, that needs to happen. Ellen?
I think that makes sense because no matter what we talk about with the other elementary schools, I think we know Mary Hogan, MUMS, and MUHS are in need and will remain. So they seem like the high to get those, to Chip's earlier point about the amount of work and time and money that can go into being shovel ready, to have those, I mean, not to say that it'll be there, but to have the facilities committee sort of lead the charge on those 3 schools in particular, while the C30 discussion around the footprint of our elementary schools is ongoing. I think that makes good prioritization sense.
Yeah, and in that same
Joanna.
line, just going off Mary Hogan and the high school work that's already been done, those are the 2 buildings that have had capital improvement work done. And thinking about the grandfathering in, it makes sense to then continue that conversation that's already been started.
Yeah, that would be awesome if we could get some of that paid for, right? That wasn't covered.
One of those things was paid for, the federal government paid.
Oh, I know, but not the whole thing,
This was
not the
very
whole
nice.
thing.
We can't get money for that.
Yeah, no, not the whole thing, though. We've allocated in our budget the remainder of that, which I don't even remember the exact amount, but I think it was 800 or 700,000 or whatever. Mary Heather.
I guess the other thing I wanted to just bring up is, I mean, there's 2 reasons behind this agenda item.
Yep.
One is obviously, after the presentation that Matt and Bruce put together, we need to come together as a board and be specific to the facilities committee and say, okay, here's the work that we as a board want you to do. But secondly, Jason had sent a
Yes.
message to the executive committee, just bringing up kind of a suggestion for best practice that other boards use, at the beginning of their years in, bringing on new board members, but also kind of revisiting the charges of committees and sort of reaffirming and realigning as needed the work that committees do, and sort of brought that up as like, okay, this is something that we should probably think about. And obviously the facilities committee's work is kind of rising to the top in terms of refocusing and reestablishing that charge. So I think this is something that we'll have to do for other committees as well
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
But certainly facilities committee is the most pressing one.
Yeah, and I
So
think part of reorg, we should always just do that.
revisit, yeah.
Always do that.
Yeah.
And I apologize, we didn't do that this year.
Sophia.
Sophia?
Well, I have a question, and then if it doesn't pertain, it's a follow-up question. This is about doing maintenance on the school, right?
Mhm.
Okay. That's a follow-up question. So I guess it's a comment, but I think that so if you guys don't know, I work for Mary Dawson, this children's center. I think I worked at the summer camp this summer, and they were doing a bunch of maintenance in the A-lane and in the hallways, and they were doing a ton of stuff, and we had to go around. And so I think that being super strategic about how either the maintenance people or how you are, I don't know, placing things in hallways and stuff, and how you tell people to go around or stuff, because it was really difficult because Mary Johnson is placed inside the school in the summer. So it's not just during the educational school year, it's also during the summers and the after school programs and stuff. So I think you have to be really strategic about how you
Plan work.
plan it and present it, because it's really difficult to go around and stuff. I don't know how to say it,
I
but
get what you're saying,
Yeah.
because at one point in time when I worked at Mary Hogan, it was under construction, so we walked underneath scaffolding and we wore hard hats.
yeah.
So,
It would rain all the time, and the hallways were locked off, and we had to take our kids in the rain to lunch, and it was, so I just think be strategic about how things.
when it gets there.
Did you hear that, Bruce?
I did.
Think of the children.
Yes, I absolutely. They're always the top priority.
I just wanted to clarify, so it sounds like we're kind of coalescing around charging the facilities committee with immediately diving into process one. Process two, how we engage with C30 is still a question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And as I was writing notes for this meeting, I was like, we should have probably put C30 on the agenda as well. And we didn't, right? Because it's really two separate things. I mean, do we want to talk about that here, or do we want to have that on the agenda for the next
I have it
meeting?
on the next one.
Mary?
Yeah, I think maybe we should wrap up at least initiating the process one for the facilities
Yep.
committee, get that clear. I think it's,
Yeah,
we can't add something to the
Yeah.
agenda, but certainly I think it probably should be on the next agenda
Yeah.
so that we can move
Yeah.
on the next process as soon as possible.
yes.
Just a request or a suggestion, whenever it comes up, a prompt for how we should show up for that conversation would be really helpful. Should we come having thought or with questions about a process by which the whole board would engage with C30? Should we come with our questions on C30? I think it's going to be a big conversation, obviously not a one and done, but however we first start to engage
Right.
with it. And I think it should happen soon
Sure.
Just a little, if the executive committee could like give us some direction about how you want us as board members to be preparing for that would be helpful.
Yeah, and June 24th was the meeting that we talked about, C30, right? And there were some ideas, and I went back to Mary Heather's minutes, which is always really helpful. Ideas included having the policy committee work on policies D6 and 30 and present to the board, creating an ad hoc committee, then having the facilities committee return to its original work of identifying the most effective and sustainable school configuration for the district. So those were things that came up during that particular meeting. So just to kind of put that in folks' mind as well. Okay.
I just have one clarifying question. Is it gonna come to the full board first and then get passed to the policy committee, or is it gonna start with?
We're
That's the
going,
question.
That's the question.
Oh,
Is the
The
process
board
that
has to
would,
figure out what it wants to do.
yeah,
To
and so
whom to
we're,
direct this work,
right. So we're
et
gonna
cetera.
put it on the
Got it.
agenda at the
To
next
then
meeting
decide.
so that we can then charge either an ad hoc, the policy committee, whatever, to take on this work. Okay,
So
yes, Suzanne.
we need to have a motion to give a charge, an updated charge to the facilities committee, a second, and then a vote on it.
Okay.
I will move to charge the facilities committee to move forward with process one, phase one,
Phase one of process one.
phase one of process one.
And is there a second? Second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think it would help if we clarified for the committee what their deliverables should be to the board. So what is the board expecting in terms of reporting out? What do we want from them?
Good question. So I think recommendations on really those critical things that need to be done in those schools, you know, based on the fact that we've done some work already, right? What else?
Like I don't know how the capital improvement plan is structured, but, you know, finish that, have something that, like the plan for the board to read in that chapter.
And Suzanne?
Well, Matt's gone, but Bruce, do you have a being the facilities guy, being on that 72 committee, what can you suggest that the board should add to this charge for facilities to keep this moving as far as deliverables?
I would suggest that we focus on, work that we're not going to have to redo.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and when I say that, I'm thinking of trying to prioritize projects that don't have a lot of sister costs. When we say we want to do a lighting project, often that requires redoing the ceiling. Once you redo the ceiling, if you have to redo your fire alarm system, you have to redo your public address system. So I think as we look at our list, we should try and be mindful of what tangential items would be involved in doing a project.
Mary Heather?
So just to clarify, if we kind of had the motion say like.
We can amend the motion.
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of bouncing this off of Ruth. If we set of Bruce, if we, had them complete phase one of process one and deliver identifying remaining improvement projects at the 3 Middlebury schools, so Mary Hogan, MUMS, and MUHS, prioritizing projects based on triage or, I don't know, level
What
of,
can be shovel ready?
yeah, and what can be
What can be shovel ready?
shovel ready.
Certainly, we'd have to consider, emerging needs.
Right.
I know we've said in the past that there's a space problem at the middle school, which isn't necessarily a deferred maintenance item, but it's
Right.
something that we need to address.
Okay.
It would be helpful to understand the educational capacity of each of the three buildings as we do education today. What is it that we can utilize them in order to accomplish? So that would be helpful.
So can I make a motion
Yeah,
to amend the motion?
Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion to amend the motion to include a deliverable from the facilities committee that includes an assessment of educational capacity at the three Mary Hogan schools, identifying remaining improvements.
Three Middlebury schools.
Sorry, Middlebury schools, thank you. Identify the remaining improvements and prioritize the projects or triage based on sort of their shovel readiness.
Including the capacity.
Education.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I'm so sorry. Can I have a second for that motion? Okay, Laura? Any discussion? Okay, I'm not gonna repeat everything she said. All those in favor of the amendment to the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And, oh, well, Ellie, thank you, sorry. So,
Got it.
it's an aye.
I think it's an aye.
Yeah. So Mary Heather, could you now frame the motion for us?
Motion to charge the facilities committee to complete phase 1 of process 1 and provide the following deliverables: an assessment of educational capacity for the three Middlebury schools, identify the remaining improvements needed at those schools, and prioritize those projects based on their shovel readiness.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, how many years do we take to do that?
25.
25, okay.
So that's the timeline to get it all done.
Yes. I mean, obviously, we have to start somewhere.
Well, I mean, we have
And we have lots of
lots of background information to.
Yes, we do. We have lots of
No
data.
work has been done.
Lots of data. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Ellie. Any abstentions? Abstentions. And Steve. Okay. So we have a charge now for our facilities committee.
An updated chart.
Updated charge. Okay. The next thing I would like to just briefly talk about is board member roles and responsibilities. And what I'd like to do is just remind folks that our responsibility is governance. And if in fact we're interested in getting information from our administrators and staff and leaders, building leaders, it's mandatory that that goes through Dr. Baker, okay? So I just want to remind folks that that is really what we need to be doing going forward, and so we'd appreciate your cooperation on that. Where there has been a couple examples where that hasn't been the case, so that's why I'm repeating it here, okay? Any questions, comments? If not, do you want to say something?
I would just
Yeah.
real quick. If you have a question about what's appropriate, what's not, always check in with the executive committee or budget.
Yep.
As well.
It's also your VSBA manual, that's on the VSBA website.
And part of our training. And did you guys say?
Only that there's some, we have really, I mean, some of you are obviously very engaged and involved parents and do all kinds of service hours and volunteering things. And so I can easily kind of put together a little bit of guidance, you know, for you in terms of the things that have already come up, you know, if that's helpful. You know, as people are working their way through things.
Thank you. Next is report of the board, and we have the whole list here. I know that some of the committees haven't met, so it's perfectly fine to just pass after the summer. Communications and engagement, Tricia.
We will be having our next meeting in September. We did not have an August meeting. And we've already got stuff for our agenda.
Yes. Facilities.
We'll be meeting next on September 18th.
Okay, excellent. Chip.
Finance hasn't met. I'm not sure what the next meeting is. I think it's usually the first.
It's Labor Day.
It's Labor Day, so.
Oh.
I was gonna ask if we're meeting.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I haven't talked to Matt because he obviously is.
Negotiations.
I just received today a tentative agreement from Chris Leopold, although nothing has been signed. So we are very close.
Thank you. Policy.
In the packet is policy A20, again, which is about board meeting materials and how we prepare the agenda. You saw this in June. The only change I made from that meeting to this one based upon, I filled in some blanks. I added where the meeting is and the time. And in relation to our discussion about rotating meetings an hour ago, I put footnote 2 about schedule may be subject to change based on holidays, calendar. Anything else, please check our online stuff. I added a footnote, Robert's Rules of Order, and that was it. Our board or our committee did just meet last week, and we decided we're going to meet twice a month, just because we have a lot of stuff coming up. On our September 9th meeting, there will be a bunch of policies for you to see for the first time.
So
yeah.
let's take action
Oh, sure, okay.
on this.
Sure.
I think, and then we can have
Sure.
more of an update if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the update to A20?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now, any discussion on, Tricia?
Tricia, thank you.
Any discussion on the policy?
Can I just ask one question
Yeah.
about why it's specifically stated exactly what time we meet and where? I guess
It said on this blank
Template.
template we got from VSBA, it says insert date and time and place here, so that people know. I agree. Well, that's so people know where we meet, I guess. I mean, I agree it does seem a little odd because if we change our meeting time, whatever, but then we'll have to update this. That's the guidance that VSBA gives. That's why I did that.
And that, I mean, we had a discussion, Jamie and I, and that's why he put the footnote in there.
yeah, no, I understand that. It just seems like for a policy.
Yeah.
That can change for many different reasons.
I agree.
Including weather and all sorts of other things, not just what we vote to do at some point.
I agree, but this seems to be the way they're recommending doing it, and that's the way. I talked to Barbara about it, and actually briefly Suzanne about it too. It's the way it seemed.
Okay.
And that's why the footnote, I think,
Oh, I
helps.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, folks, please check the calendar.
Yeah.
Steve?
And there was something that we learned from the policy committee. for those of you that are wondering whether this is the first or the second reading, there's actually, we got some guidance back from VSBA. Jamie, did you want to say something about that, about the 10 days versus the?
I'm not, keep going, because I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So the idea is that if it's warned now, there is no first reading, and then you get to sit around and wait for the second reading. You have to be prepared to discuss it, to pass it when it's on there, because if the warning comes out 10 days before, that's our window. We don't have to do it twice. The past procedure was first meeting, you read it to get it warned. Second meeting, you read it to get it passed. That's not the case.
Right, but I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong, that could be the case.
It could be the case.
Yes,
Right.
which is the case for this.
For this one,
Yeah.
it is no longer a
Yeah.
requirement.
So,
Right.
so can we keep the discussion related, thank you, Steve, but to 820? Yes, Jason?
I suggest that in our reorg meeting in the spring, that we just put this on the agenda to update the policy for the new meeting time if the time changes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? I'm sorry to rush, but I'm trying to move us forward. All those in favor of adopting 820 as changed, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Ellie. Okay, it is passed. Now you can give an additional update.
Okay, I'll just say that, as I said, we're gonna meet twice a month, we have a lot going on. And at the next meeting, there'll be a bunch of policies that will be in the packet. That will be great if you just gave a heads up beforehand, and maybe I'll send another email to folks just reminding you of that before the meeting or something like that, just because it'll be good to come having read the stuff, so we can kind of, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hannaford Career Center, Tricia, Steve.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we had our retreat.
Yep.
Where we went through very similar sorts of training with Judy Sclair Stein. And that was lovely.
You guys could teach it.
Yes. Steve, any?
Well, so a very similar way, we kind of pre-did this in the spring, and so that was the meeting where we set the goals for the superintendent, started talking about the goal, not just what's the process, we are involved in the process, we set our goals. Well, we almost set them. Let's just leave it at that. Things are going well at the Career Center, and where we saw enrollment maybe up, so that's a good thing. So.
Thank you. Suzanne, anything more on Addison County VSBA update?
There's two representatives from each county and our terms are closing. So Mark Koenig's term is up, and so he is rerunning, but if anybody else would like to run against him, I believe you need to reach out to Susan Gillespie and give her your bio. Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
And the meeting date is?
Next Thursday, 5:30 on Zoom.
Okay. Addison County CPAC, Joanna and Suzanne again? They haven't met, okay.
That's pretty quiet.
And Middlebury Community Television hasn't met either. And I left off Rex the part of it.
That's okay, the meeting was canceled and
Okay.
actually it was on the same day as our training, so I wouldn't be able to go.
Okay, okay. Thank you, guys. Public comment on any topic, again, no public in the room. Is there a, yeah, so if in fact, you would like to make a public comment, please indicate by raising your hand, Zoom hand. Okay, so no public comments this evening. We added a new agenda item, which is board reflection, and I'm going to have Suzanne kind of lead us in this one.
So, board reflections are pretty quick, they're pretty simple. So what I'm looking at tonight is the efficiency of our meeting. So did we start on time? Did we interact appropriately? And did we adhere to open meeting law, which we did. We were all very courteous to each other. We started promptly on time, and we're ending
We're early.
a little bit early. So those are all good things. So we can continue to strive to have our meetings go like this.
Excellent.
Can we be discourteous now? Now that
No.
She's not watching anymore, so no.
That's a humor norm.
Thank you, Suzanne. And can I have a motion for, yes?
Before you do, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I don't
No.
know if it's on adjourned, but I'm just wondering, moving forward, I would like to keep board reflection in
Yes.
there, just so that we can kind of develop a practice of just checking in.
Yep.
But I'm wondering what everybody's thoughts are about, like, taking turns, kind of taking charge of that. I don't know, or how y'all want to handle it, whether it should always be,
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm just curious what people's thoughts are.
And do what kind of Suzanne just did as
I
an
think the
example.
chair should appoint a person on the agenda.
Okay. And should I just kind of like
Randomly.
randomly select? Oh, I love that.
So I will tell you one place that you can go is the efficient and ethical operations, the self-assessment. We all did this
Yep.
in the spring.
Yep.
You can look at this for some information. You can also go to the quality standards for boards. So there's 2 places you can get information. If anybody, is struggling for what they might like to chat about, put the
Could you-
information there.
You send that around.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Could you send that around?
Sure.
Thank you.
You want it, or tonight, over email or something?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll do
That'd
that.
be awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
To
Okay.
to our student representatives, I hope this makes you want to be on school boards when you get the chance to be on it and not turn you off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck for the rest of your first meeting.
How would you want to find the
I'm going to.
I know.
Yeah.
Like where, do they have a web presence?